Howdy, this is the Views from the Shop podcast. I'm your host, your one and only host, Tim Miller, and today it is Tuesday, February 24th, 2026, and I wish you a very, very, very happy World Spay Day. On today's show, it's a preview for a huge matchup for the Ohio State University Buckeyes. They will travel to Iowa and take on the Hawkeyes on Wednesday night, 9 p.m. tip-off for that one. On today's show, we will give a complete game breakdown for a game with a lot of stakes, a lot on the line for both sides, not just in Big Ten positioning, but NCAA Tournament positioning, and for Ohio State specifically, just remaining on the bubble and having a fighter's chance at making the NCAA Tournament. So as we get into this, as always, please, if you're watching on YouTube, like the video right now. That helps a lot, helps more than you could ever understand. Drop a comment. What's your prediction for the game? What's your final score prediction between Ohio State and Iowa in this one? And make sure you're subscribed as well. Y'all are doing a great job. Let's continue to do a great job. We can't let up now. Let's get to 300 subscribers before March Madness begins. If you're on podcasts, give a 5-star review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts as well. And I would recommend you get to the Substack, viewsfromtheshoppodcast.substack.com. That's where I drop a lot of just coverage outside of the podcast, outside of YouTube, written coverage that you can see there. You can even get push notifications to your phone for Ohio State news, notes, and things like that. So highly recommend you get to that one. This is a big game for Ohio State. It's a big game for Iowa. Not really splitting hairs necessarily on how big of a win this game would be compared to an Ohio State win at home against Purdue. You have Iowa, because this game is at Iowa, it does carry a little bit more weight, but still that home victory over Purdue would mean more still for Ohio State on the resume at this point. But this is a clear quad one game for Ohio State. It will always be a quad one game. They're waiting on, will Wisconsin finish as a quad one win? Will Northwestern finish as a quad one win? That's what we wait on. But in this game, we know Iowa, win or lose, this is going to be a quad one game for the rest of the season for Ohio State. And you may have, I don't know, more optimism that Ohio State can win this game compared to the Purdue game. So because of that, maybe you have more excitement, more hope heading into this one. Regardless, this is a huge opportunity for Ohio State to pick up another statement signature type win. They came close against Michigan State. They came close against Virginia. The Wisconsin win is good, but it was at home, so it doesn't qualify for quad one yet. So it's a big game for Ohio State, but a big game for Iowa as well. They're on a bit of a skid right now. They're safely in the field right now, but in danger of snowballing at this point. We'll talk about how Iowa basketball has played over the past couple weeks later on in the show. Ohio State, again, they need that quad one win. They cannot afford to allow these games to continue to slip out of their hands as we get on the home stretch of the season here. These teams are tied in 8th place in the Big Ten standings right now. So seeding on the line. If you're Ohio State, if you're Iowa, really, I don't think it matters where you're seated at this point, as long as you're not an 8 or a 9. Both teams would probably rather prefer to be a 7 or even a 6. Look, if I'm either side, I'd rather be a 7, or I will pass up the opportunity to be an 8 or 9 to be a 10 at this point. I'm trying to avoid Michigan at all costs in the Big Ten tournament. So a lot on the line in this one. Let's get into a full game preview and breakdown now. Again, thanks so much for being here. It's a loaded show. We've got four full pages of notes in this one. And Iowa fans, if you're here for the first time, welcome. Please drop a like. It would mean the world to me. And there's no bad blood between Ohio State and Iowa basketball, right? So let's get into it. Background on Iowa so far this year. First-year head coach Ben McCollum leading the team in just his second season ever as a head coach at the Division I college basketball level. Last year, he leads Drake to a 31-4 season, very quickly picks up a job in year 2, head coach on the Division I level. Now he's with Iowa, highly successful at Northwest Missouri State in Division II, several championships there. But again, only a second year in Division I as a head coach in college basketball. Drake misses him dearly, by the way, at this point. And then this is still the Ben McCollum team that if you saw Drake at all last year, if you've seen Iowa at all this year, this is Ben McCollum basketball. It's no pace. I mean, slower than slow in terms of pace. They want to shoot it efficiently. That's what they do. Score a bunch of paint points. Have the better defense on the floor. There's two defenses on the floor. It's Ben McCollum's and it's the other defense. And Ben McCollum would prefer to have the better defense. And in general, he has had the better defense. So McCollum at this point leading Iowa to a pretty solid year in year one. 19-7, 9-7. Iowa waves goodbye to Fran McCaffrey, who we miss dearly. Gave us a lot of good content as we watched Iowa basketball in years prior, just because he would get very angry very quickly, stare at officials. It's a good time, right? He's gone. Now in, it's been McCollum at this point, of course. Unimpressive in the non-conference this year for Iowa. Resume. Is this right? This can't be right. Iowa. We've got to do better in the non-conference. 340th in non-conference strength of schedule, according to Ken Palm. You take your pick of these wins. Xavier, Ole Miss, Grand Canyon. Which of those is your favorite non-conference win? None of them all that impressive. That's the best that Iowa boasts at this point. Of course, Ohio State, on the flip side, its best non-conference win, a neutral site victory over West Virginia. So not much can be spoken on there on the Ohio State side. They competed with Iowa State, lost by 4 points in that one. However, recently, Iowa losers in 3 of its last 4, with its only win coming in a huge upset over Nebraska earlier last week. Really ugly loss to Maryland, by the way, to start the skid. At that point, that was a point where I was looking at Iowa and saying, there's a chance, especially with the schedule coming up here. There's no gimmies in the Big Ten. They learned that against Maryland. There's a chance that Iowa could be in trouble, and they're not in trouble yet, but they're not firmly in the NCAA tournament at this point. Some good wins in the Big Ten. They've got an away victory over Indiana. They've got, of course, that home win over Nebraska. That one's huge. A home win, just like Ohio State has, over UCLA. And they won on the road against Washington. As of recording, which is the nighttime, the late night time, you will know. I don't. You know the outcome of Kansas and Houston. I had it on my other screen. I wish I could do that better. I just get distracted. So alas, I must click the X and move on. You know the outcome of that game. At this point, the metrics, predictive metrics. So 28th in net for Iowa, 26th in Ken Palm and Bart Torvik. So both of those platforms seeing Iowa as a very, very good team so far this year. And they're healthy right now too. Led by 2 Drake transfers. Of course, you know the name Bennett Sturts. You also probably know the name Tavion Banks, former Bulldog, follows Bennett Sturts, follows Ben McCollum to Iowa. So this is an Iowa team that's healthy. This is an Iowa team that has a good record, that has a solid performance so far in the Big Ten, winning more games than it's lost, but on a bit of a skid right now, looking to get back on track here in a home game against Ohio State. So let's get into this Iowa offense. I told you they play slow. They play slow, snail's pace. So far this year, they're averaging 76 points per game, shooting at 49.4% from the field, 35.9% of three-pointers are made, and they're 30th in the nation in adjusted offensive efficiency while being first percentile in pace in college basketball so far this year. It's better than 0th, first percentile in pace. So, by the way, Iowa in the past 2 years, final 2 years under Fran McCaffrey, 93rd and 94th percentile in pace. Huge difference in style of play from the past couple years to now this year for Iowa under McCollum. They only take 53.9 field goal attempts per game. That is incredibly low. And yet, It's a 122.1 offensive rating. That's 27th in the nation and 4th in the Big Ten. So even with the low pace, you may see the points per game number and say, that's not impressive whatsoever. They're highly, highly efficient when they've got the ball, are the Iowa Hawkeyes. At this point, you really can't talk about Iowa unless you're talking about Bennett Sturts. When you talk about Iowa, it's all about Bennett Sturts at this point. 20.6 points per game so far this year for the Drake transfer, 4.5 assists per game, 51% from the field is Sturts. He makes 39% of his triple attempts and an 84% shooter from the free throw line. He's third in the Big Ten in scoring. Bruce Thornton, by the way, is right behind Bennett Sturts. 10th in the conference in assists per game as well. Sturts he's an impressive player for Iowa, of course, but not just for Iowa, across the entire Big Ten and across the nation right now. He's getting a lot of attention. He's in line for a bunch of Big Ten honors. He's in line for some national honors as well. He's 18th in the nation in scoring. He was named to the Naismith Trophy College Player of the Year late season team. Imagine being the guy who has to put together that graphic at Iowa. Like, great, got the news that Bennett Sturts is on the Naismith Trophy College Player of the Year late season team. That's a lot of typing. That's a lot of space to take up on a graphic. So shout out to the Iowa graphics team, I guess, is my point there. Sturts, I mean, he's got the ball in his hands all the time. 91st percentile in usage rate, 97th percentile in true shooting percentage. He's 72nd percentile in turnover rate. It's just hard to find holes in his game. Can't hold a candle to the almighty Bruce Thornton's rebounding numbers. Of course, we know, but Bennett Sturts, one of the best players in the Big Ten. He's been a huge pickup for the Hawkeyes so far this year. You're watching highlights right now of him against Nebraska. Really helped lead the way for the Hawkeyes, pick up that home win over the Cornhuskers, a signature win against a top 10-ish team, depending on where you look in Nebraska. So at this point, Bennett Sturts is the guy to watch for Iowa's offense. He's the guy to watch for Iowa in general. Very, very good player is Sturts. Obviously, I would assume Bruce Thornton's going to have the primary responsibility to guard Bennett Sturts. We'll see how he can handle Sturts in this one, but that's where you start with the Iowa offense is Bennett Sturts. Now, where do we go from there? When we look at just Iowa's overall style of play, they love to score in the paint. 34.4 paint points per game so far this season for Iowa. This is an Iowa team that, again, they're highly, highly efficient, and a lot of this comes from inside. 34.4 paint points per game, 68% of shots at the rim go in. NCAA average is 62%. 47% of shots in the paint are converted. NCAA average is 42%. So they're going to take more shots at the rim than NCAA average. They love to score in the paint. That is where they are best offensively, is finding ways to dribble, to penetrate, to make layups, to get shots at the rim, to get dunk attempts, to get up near the rim and score. That is where Iowa is really, really good. You look at Bennett Sturts there, leads the team in paint scoring with 7.2 paint points per game. Very impressive for a 6'4 guard. Ohio State, Bruce Thornton, for comparison's sake, he scores 9.4 paint points per game. So, I mean, Bruce Thornton is just the best at many things for Ohio State. One of those things being paint scoring, and even better than Bennett Sturts, who's been very, very good scoring on the interior so far this year. Bennett Sturts is making 76% of shots that he attempts at the rim. That is way above NCAA average. So Bennett Sturts, again, very good off the dribble, creating for himself, but getting into the paint and making shots there. He's absolutely incredible. Paint scoring, again, from Sturts comes more so from efficiency than volume. He's not going to take a bunch of shots at the rim or in the paint necessarily, but he will get inside a pretty fair amount. Not as much as Bruce Thornton, but still a lot. You look at Tavian Banks. That's another player to keep your eye on in terms of paint scoring. He's scoring 5.8 paint points per game so far this year at Iowa. He takes almost 60% of his shots at the rim. This is your classic slashing wing. This is a player that I tried to create on NBA 2K X amount of years ago. It was more than I'd like to admit. I'm way dated on NBA 2K. Haven't played in a while, but at least at the time, this was a game that you could play. Create a player, do your my player, whatever. And I thought, hey, I'll make him a slashing player. He'll be really good getting the rim. He couldn't make a three to save his life. And I'm not saying that's the case for Banks, but he wants to slash. And we'll talk more about his 3-point shooting here later on. Definitely wants to slash, wants to get into the paint and score 5.8 paint points per game for Tavian Banks. You also look at Cam Manyow. He's averaging above 5 paint points per game so far this year for Iowa as well. He is Zed Key-like, okay? If you're an Ohio State fan, you know Zed Key. You remember Zed Key. I think, Key listed at 6'8" at Ohio State and UD. Manyow stands at 6'9", so 1 additional inch there, which, hey, that can be important. He's never going to take a shot outside the paint. He's got 2 shots this entire season from the mid-range and 0 from behind the arc, so he is your classic little undersized big, but going to take shots inside. He's scoring above 5 paint points per game as well. Now, on Ohio State's side, this is what we got to talk about here, because just because one team is really good at something, you got to look at how the other team matches up. And I will tell you, matchups, I think, are going to be key in this game more than we've seen Ohio State games so far this year. In a lot of instances, Ohio State is 70th percentile in paint points allowed per game. That's pretty solid. That number has held up too in conference play. Other metrics like rebounding, for example, have not held up in conference play. They're allowing 30.4 paint points per game. Iowa, again, scoring 34.4 paint points per game. So a strength on strength battle there. Michigan State scored 26 paint points against Ohio State. The Badgers scored 34 the last time they went at it. USC scored 30 paint points against Ohio State. That's over the last 3. So really solid paint defense from Ohio State. They have not allowed more than Iowa scores in the paint so far this year over the last 3, but good teams have kind of crushed Ohio State. Look at Michigan. They handed them 42 paint points in their last meeting. Wisconsin scored 42 paint points in their first meeting with Ohio State. The Buckeyes, of course, lost both of those games. So Ohio State, when they play strong paint offenses, they struggle a little bit. Iowa would be a strong paint offense, not an elite paint offense, but a strong paint offense. So that's something to keep an eye on in this one. Another one that we look at for the Iowa Hawkeyes, they're efficient from absolutely everywhere. The field goal numbers at time, you look at that, it can be misleading. They're 18th in the nation in field goal percentage, but how do you value that when a team is shooting a bunch of 2s compared to a team that shoots it well but shoots a bunch of 3s? And that is where the beautiful stat of effective field goal percentage comes in. Iowa still 19th in the nation in effective field goal percentage at 56.7%. The Hawkeyes at this point in the season, they're shooting it well wherever you look, whether it be from inside, from outside. 18th in 2-point percentage in the nation. They're 66th in the nation and 3-point percentage, and 34th in college basketball in free throw percentage. They're going to play 8 players regularly. I think it's 8 players. Where is that number? It's not 8 players. It might be 8 players who have played 26 out of 27 games so far this year for Iowa. Let me find that real quick just so I don't lie to you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, all 8 players who get real minutes for Iowa have played all 27 games so far this year for the Hawkeyes. That said, of those 8, 6 are shooting 34% or better from behind the 3-point line, and 5 hit 35% or better of their shots from behind the arc. Best shooter is going to be Banks. Incredible 45%. Awesome. Great number. What if John Mobley Jr. for Ohio State shot 45%? Or sorry, 45%. That'd be great. It'd also be great if he could play in this game. We'll see. The issue is his 3-point attempt rate is 6th percentile in college basketball. So he can shoot it from 3. He just, he'll pass. I'm really good at it, but I want to flex on you, is essentially what Banks is saying. He's also saying I'd rather score at the rim and in the paint. So that's a player to keep an eye on. If he gets a shot up, good chance it'll go in. Just how many of those is he going to take against Ohio State? You look at Sturtz making just shy of 40% of his three-pointers with a more palatable 45.6% three-point attempt rate. That's not crazy high. It's not crazy low. It's just average. Sturtz can score from anywhere on the floor. Super, super smooth with the ball in his hands. You look at Cooper Koch. Koch? Cooper Koch. Cooper Koch. He's the guy to watch from deep, okay? Making 35% of his attempts on a very, very, very high 67.1% three-point attempt rate so far this year. Koch is 6'8", and he's a freshman. A little bit of a stretch four action there from Koch. And then from the free throw line, Iowa making 80, or three players are making 80% of their free throw attempts or better so far this year. So they've got shooters. They're efficient from everywhere. Now we flip to Ohio State side. Again, we got to talk about the Buckeyes here. And I think it's important to point out that Ohio State's defense, it's been strong defending the field so far this year. They're fourth in the conference in three-point percentage defending so far this year. Teams are shooting it 43% against Ohio State across the season and 43% from the field over the last 5. So 43%. That you should project Iowa to shoot somewhere around 43% in this game, I guess. And now at this point, Iowa will shoot probably like 51%. And I've ruined everything for all of us. But hey, I sometimes you have just too much power. So Iowa, very good defense, or Iowa, very good scoring, very good, very efficient from the field. The Buckeyes, very, very good defending the field. I've got good news for you, folks. All right. You want the good news? I've got the good news. Well, there's some other good news that's not college basketball related, but I guess that's not the show for this. But in terms of good news for this game, Ohio State is going to play a team that will not crush you on the offensive glass. It's about time. Ohio State just got done playing Michigan State, got destroyed, outclassed, out-rebounded like crazy in that game. Iowa is 11th in the Big Ten. Imagine telling, not even a pilgrim, it doesn't need to be a pilgrim, just someone 20 years ago, hey, guy, in the year 2026, Iowa will be 11th in the Big Ten in offensive rebounding rate. And to go further, that's almost top half of the conference. I would throw up. 2005 me would throw up and then go play GameCube. Iowa 11th in Big Ten in the Big Ten in offensive rebounding rate. Now, Ohio State has played the number 2 offensive rebounding team in the Big Ten, the number 3 offensive rebounding team in the Big Ten twice, the number 6 and number 8 offensive rebounding team in the Big Ten over the last 9. So Ohio State could just use a break. It would be great if they could relax a little, not relax, but just give me a little bit of cushion on the offensive glass or defensive glass if you're Ohio State. Iowa's offensive rebounding production hasn't been bad as of late, hasn't been good either. This is a matchup Ohio State can't lose. Just full stop. Buckeyes can't afford it, okay? They've got to go into this one, and they have got to defensive rebound, okay? They've got to be good. Devin Royal goes. I fully believe that Devin Royal will play in this game for Ohio State. As long as he goes, there's no excuse as to why Ohio State cannot rebound in this game. You're looking at Christoph Tilley. You're looking at Amari Bynum. Obviously, Bruce Thornton to help as well. But overall, this is a matchup where Ohio State cannot lose on the defensive glass. The defense for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Let's talk about it. Allowing 65.1 points per game so far this season. That is a very, very good number, folks. From the field, Iowa's defense, 45.1%. 32.1% of three-point attempts are converted against Iowa, and they're 34th in the nation in adjusted defensive efficiency. Look, guys, hand up. We've all been fooled by numbers before, right? Maybe even myself. Maybe I've been included in that. We can't be fooled by Iowa's points per game number, okay? 9th in the nation in defensive points per game. But because of that pace, you adjust the numbers out and we go to efficiencies, it's a little less impressive. They are 215th in the nation in percentage of points allowed in the paint. Why do I mention that? Well, it's noteworthy, but also it is absolutely huge for Ohio State. This is a Buckeye team that loves to score inside. They love to score in the paint. That's something Ohio State is going to look to do in this one. So that's an advantageous matchup for the Buckeyes. In 5 of the last 7 games for Iowa, they've allowed over 50% of points to be scored in the paint. That, quite simply, is not going to get the job done. That's really, really bad. That's a really high amount. Allowing 1 out of every 2 points to be scored against you in the paint, way too high. Ohio State, especially without John Mobley Jr., they're going to have to look to players like Devin Royal going in this one. Obviously, you're going to look to Bruce Thornton in this one. You're going to look to Amari Bynum in this one, who can score in the paint. The Buckeyes have a lot of players like that, especially without John Mobley Jr. You're going to have to be able to score inside. And I think against a team like Iowa, you're going to have a pretty good shot to do this. As we continue to look at Iowa's defense, this is a Hawkeye defense that can turn you over. An 11.3% steal rate for the Hawkeyes. That would lead you to believe that they've got more steals per game than they do. But again, because of that pace, it's a 7.3 steal per game number for the Hawkeyes. This leads to offense. This is a number to know here, folks. 22nd in college basketball is Iowa in points off turnovers per game. That's a high number for the Hawkeyes. So Ohio State can't turn the ball over. Pretty simply, they can't turn the ball over. It's easier said than done. And I don't know necessarily how Ohio State doesn't turn the ball over. I don't know how to tell Ohio State not to do that. They just can't do it. Okay. I can tell them not to do it. I can't tell them how. Here's what I will say. Ohio State turnover rate this year, 14%, middle of the pack. Not anything special, but over the last 5, they've taken care of the ball a lot better. So Buckeyes they've got to take care of the ball in this one. You look at players like Bennett Sturts, for example, he can create turnovers. You'll see Tavian Banks create turnovers as well. For Iowa, that's something to keep an eye on. For Ohio State, they've got to squeeze the orange. In this one, Iowa rebounding on the defensive glass. They're solid, but they're not great. And again, exactly what Ohio State needs to hear and exactly what Ohio State needs to do to feel good about having a great shot at winning this game. They got to rebound, and they're going to play a team that's not special rebounding. 7th in the conference and defensive rebounding rate at 71.3%. It's good, not special. They were exceptional against Nebraska. They were exceptional against Wisconsin in defensive rebounding, offensive rebounding, defense rebounding. It's not really Iowa's calling card at this point, I would say. So this is a matchup that, again, if you are the Buckeyes, you're going to have to be strong on the glass. You're going to have to give yourself a chance to win this game by simply having the ability to pull in rebounds. For Ohio State on the offensive glass, if you can create a couple more shots, if you can score on second chance opportunities, that's going to help you win this game. Again, against Nebraska and Wisconsin, they were really, really good on the defensive glass. Maryland and Purdue, the 2 games before that, they were horrible. So this is an Iowa team, kind of similar to what we said earlier. They're probably going to play to their competition rebounding-wise. They were really bad against really good rebounding teams. They were pretty good against not great rebounding teams. So Ohio State, not a great rebounding team. One team has got to win the rebounding matchup in this one. We'll see who does it. Now, Tavian Banks, he's averaging 3.1 defensive rebounds per game this year for Iowa. That leads the team. Ohio State has 4 players averaging more defensive rebounds than Tavian Banks, Iowa's leading defensive rebounder so far this year with 3.1. Again, we have to adjust for pace, but it just goes to show you the Hawkeyes not the strongest defensive rebounding team so far this season. One other note here, as we talk about Iowa, as I kind of shared, Iowa has struggled over since February 1st, to be specific. They're 4-3. That's not a horrible record, especially in the Big Ten, kind of on pace for how they've played so far this year in the Big Ten. But what I will say about the Hawkeyes, if you're wondering why is Iowa gone on a bit of a skid, It's defense. Defensive rating since February 1st for Iowa has fallen all the way to 5th percentile in college basketball. Remember what Iowa is. They're a really strong defensive team. That's how Ben McCollum has built them. So the defensive rating now sits at 120.3 since February 1st. That means that Iowa is allowing 120 points per 100 possessions. If you do that across an entire season, you will get fired. So, not a good number. Not something to be proud of, something I'm sure they're trying to fix there for the Hawkeyes, but the points per possession at this point, the defense rating not good. They're allowing 71.6 points per game during this span since February 1st. Field goal percentage, that shoots up to 48.6% over this span. All shooting metrics have actually risen during this time. They're not forcing turnovers whatsoever. That steal rate down to 8.4%. And the offensive rating is still 119. That's really good. The offense isn't the problem. It's been the defense. So if Ohio State is going to win this game, it's probably going to be on the offensive end for the Buckeyes, continuing to beat down a struggling Iowa defense. Or if Ohio State's going to lose this game and Iowa's going to win this game, it may be because Iowa figures it out at least somewhat here on the defensive side of the ball. So that's something to keep an eye on here as well as we look ahead to this matchup for the Buckeyes and the Hawkeyes. Now, keys to the game in this one. How can Ohio State pull off a win against Iowa and an upset? Technically, the sports books are going to favor Iowa in this game. What can Ohio State do to pull off an upset and a road upset for the Buckeyes? Number one, simply, it's much more easier said than done. Okay, they've got to keep Iowa cold. I talked about the numbers for the Hawkeyes since February 1st. We can rehash it now and get more specific. Iowa since February 1st, 5th percentile in defensive rating, 7th percentile in field goal percentage, 2nd percentile in 2-point percentage. These are defensive numbers, I will add. 22nd percentile in 3-point percentage. And now on the offensive side, 39th percentile in offensive rebounding rate for the Hawkeyes. These are all areas where Ohio State can win. There's no question about that the Buckeyes can win in these areas. They can win being the better field goal shooting team. They can win being the better 2-point shooting team. They can potentially win being a good team on the defensive glass. That's a spot where they haven't necessarily been terrible at times so far this year. So as you look at essentially the way that this game plays out for Ohio State, I think you've got to focus on the Buckeyes have got to continue to keep Iowa cold where they've not been good. You've got a good shot to win this game. You've got the doors open. There's a crack there and several cracks really at this point with how the Hawkeyes are playing right now. If you can show the ability to keep them cold and to get your foot in the door and jam your knee in the door and then pry that thing open, you got a good chance to win the game. But you got to take advantage of where Iowa has not been good over the past several games. The other plays Ohio State's got to win, they've got to crush them inside. This is probably the keyest of all key stats to this game, okay? Ohio State is 21st in the nation in 2-point percentage offensively. As you look at the Iowa defense, they are 261st in college basketball in 2-point percentage defended. So, if Ohio State is going to win this game, they're going to have to do it on the defensive side of the glass. Or not the defensive side of the glass. Sorry, the 2-point game for the Buckeyes. You look at Christoph Tilley, you look at Bruce Thornton, you look at Amari Bynum, you look at Devin Royal, so many different players for Ohio State who can score inside. This is a key for Ohio State. Iowa not good defending the 2-point shot from the field, at least, or that's the only way you can defend the 2-point shot. Ohio State very good, 21st in the nation in 2-point percentage. That's the number. That's a stat. That's the key that wins this game for Ohio State. You crush Iowa inside, you win this game because that's where Ohio State likes to score. All right. Let's get into a prediction for this one for Ohio State. Well, The BIP likes Iowa. The BIP really likes Iowa. Okay. I don't know what this number will come out with. All right. From the sports books, but the BIP favors Iowa by 5.5 in this one. It sees a total at 144.5. I see a lot of people talking about this game. I see a lot of people talking about the Purdue game, talking about how Ohio State has to go 3-1 down the stretch. Now, here's what I'll say, and I'll repeat this stat to you again. Ohio State sits at 17-10 right now. I will actually pull this up here. This is going to come from the Substack. I did the homework for you. You're welcome. Blah, blah. You don't care. You just want to know what the number is. So, as we go back to 2022, there have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 teams. We're excluding the 2023 year because this was an outlier season. There have been 11 teams to win 20 games overall and 12 games in the Big Ten. Okay. At least 20 or well, let me rephrase. Okay. Since 2022, and we're removing 2023 because in second place in the Big Ten was Indiana. I think that year, could be completely wrong. They won 12 games. They went 12-8. It was Indiana. Finished in second place. Outlier of a season. Most years it doesn't go that way, okay? 2025, Illinois, Oregon. Illinois won 21 games, 12 Big Ten games. Oregon won 24 games, 12 Big Ten games. Both of those teams got into the NCAA tournament. Northwestern, Nebraska, and Wisconsin all won 21 or more games in 2024 and 12 games in the Big Ten. Wisconsin won 11. All three get into the NCAA tournament. In 2022, Iowa, 26 wins, 12 wins in the Big Ten. They're in. Rutgers, pay attention, folks. Rutgers, Ohio State, and Michigan won 18, 19, and 17 games, respectively. And Michigan won 11 games in the Big Ten, while Rutgers and Ohio State won 12 games in the Big Ten, and they were in the NCAA tournament. The fact is this: if you get to 20 wins overall and 12 wins in Big Ten play, we're not seeing an instance where the NCAA tournament committee is leaving a team out of the NCAA tournament, at least in the Big Ten. Okay. So that said, Ohio State, to get in the NCAA tournament, they finished 3-1 down the stretch here. They've got a very, very good shot to go dancing. And if they finish 3-1 down the stretch, by default, they'll have at least one, if not two, quad one wins. So that said, on the flip side, I see people saying this. I see people talking about Iowa and this win over Iowa that could come. I feel like Buckeye fans are getting really confident and they're seeing the path to making the NCAA tournament. And because they see the path, they think that a win over Iowa on the road or a win at home against Purdue is for some reason easier. At least that's the vibe I get from people. I don't see it that way whatsoever. Just because there's a light at the end of the tunnel and we can see how Ohio State makes the NCAA tournament doesn't mean that this game against Iowa is any easier. That said, and I said this earlier in the show, I think this is a game where Ohio State matches up exceptionally well against Iowa. Iowa, poor defending the 2-point shot. Ohio State, elite. Iowa loves to score in the paint. Ohio State, really, really good there. Paint defense. Iowa, not a strong rebounding team. Neither is Ohio State. It's not a really concern in this game. So I think there's a lot of ways where Ohio State profiles really, really well against Iowa. The issue is this game is at Iowa. This game is a home game for Iowa, and it's so hard to go on the road and win in the Big Ten. Ohio State also not expected really to have John Mobley Jr. in this game. Brandon Knowles still a ways away. I do think that that Devin Royal does play in this game. I don't see anything new coming with him or Amari Bynum. They're both sick, whatever. I think they'll be fine for this one. So Ohio State's going to still be shorthanded, especially with John Mobley Jr. Again, the BIP likes Iowa by 5.5. Look, if you're an Iowa fan, you've made it this far, I want to say thank you so much for being here. I pick against Ohio State pretty commonly, okay? Let's go back to Ohio State's schedule. I picked against Ohio State against Michigan State. That was correct. I picked against Ohio State against Wisconsin. That was correct. I believe I picked against Ohio State against Virginia. That was correct. Did I say? Shut up, man. It's late. All right. I picked against Ohio State against Michigan State. Correct. Picked against Ohio State against Wisconsin. Incorrect, but still picked against Ohio State. Picked against Ohio State against Virginia. correct. Picked against Ohio State for Michigan. Picked against Ohio State the first time they played Wisconsin. Picked against Ohio State the first time they played Michigan. I don't remember what I did for Ohio State and UCLA. All I'm saying is I'm not shy to pick against Ohio State, okay? This isn't me being a homer, but this is me picking Ohio State to win this game. I think Ohio State matches up so well with Iowa. I think where they're good, where Iowa is weak, it could not be a better matchup for Ohio State. So I'm going to pick Ohio State to cover the spread. I'm going to pick them to win outright. I'm going to pick them to get their first real, true quad one win of the season. And I'm going to pick them to be one step closer to going dancing and making it into the NCAA tournament so that everyone can stop talking about Bruce Thornton not making the NCAA tournament. So I'm taking the Buckeyes to win this game and pull off an upset. And you know, I'm not generally that optimistic about picking Ohio State in games where they're not going to be favored. I'm taking the Buckeyes in this one. I love the way Ohio State matches up against Iowa. I yearn for Ohio State to win this game, so I'm taking the Buckeyes. And that's a show. That's a game preview between Ohio State and Iowa. We will be back on Thursday morning to recap Ohio State's matchup with Iowa. We'll see what the outcome will be. I may be right. I may be wrong. Those are the only two options. So it's going to be one or the other. Until next time, thanks so much for being here today. I shut up before you shut me off. Go Bucks.